Yesterday, we got confirmation that there will be no major update coming this week, that it's going to take some time still for that update to come out. But one thing Yoshi did tell us that a balance update is coming. So today I wanted to hop on and give kind of my predictions for that update, some items and heroes that I think need buffs and nerfs, and kind of just get into the discussion about Deadlock balancing a little bit here on the channel. Hey everyone, this is Connor here at Dead Unlocked, and we'll start off with items and we'll get right into it. So for items, what I want to do here is go through each item category. So we've got weapon, vitality, and spirit. And I want to give kind of two items in each category that I think need adjustments. One item that I think needs a nerf, and one item that I think needs a buff. So that's kind of how we're going to frame the discussion. I've got Stat Locker open another window that's kind of showing item win rates, buy rates, team differential when your team has an item. Basically, how does it affect your team's win rate? And kind of get into all those sorts of things. But the item I want to start out with, and an item I think needs a buff, is actually long range. So long range right now, in all ranks in this last patch, Deadlock, according to Stat Locker, has a 4.5% buy rate, only a 46.5% win rate, meaning that it affects your team's win rate at a minus 2.7% clip. So this is one of the lowest win rate items in the game. It does not have a huge buy rate. It's relatively low. And the stats kind of show you why that's the case. Only gives you 1 meter per second sprint speed, and then it's passive. Obviously, you deal additional weapon damage when beyond a minimum distance to your target. You get plus 40% weapon damage at a 15 meter kind of clip. That upgrades into sharpshooter, obviously. I feel like this item, very understandably, is not bought because it doesn't feel like it really offers that much to the player right now. There's really no reason to go for this. You should just kind of go right into sharpshooter if you're going to go that direction, right? So this is one that I think could use some benefits, whether it is maybe a flat amount of health regen can make this item really good. There's a lot that I think could make this item good. Maybe even some defensive stats against long range bullets coming in. I think it'd be something to toggle around with this. Basically, this item just does not feel worth buying right now, and so I would love to see it get a buff in this next update. All right, on the other side of the coin completely is an item that I think could use just a small nerf. Now, I like this item, but I do think it's bought just a little bit too much and just feels a little bit too strong right now, and that is rapid rounds. So I'm saying this partially because it feels like if you're playing a gun character, this is in that must-buy territory, which always is kind of like where the spidey senses start to tingle. Like, what is making this item must-buy? Is that problematic? Is it okay? There's always going to be some, like, very heavily bought items in this game because they just fit what that character archetype is trying to do. Fire rate is universally helpful, kind of like Titanic Magazine is very helpful for ammo. Those are things that are always going to help you. But rapid rounds at 10% fire rate for 800 does feel a little bit strong. I think if you made this maybe 8% instead, or 9% even, so just a 1%, 2% change, I think would make this item just fine. I don't think it needs a massive nerf. According to Stat Locker, it's bought 29.3% of the time, so a decent buy rate, pretty high. Actually, among the higher buy rates now that I'm looking at it. It has a 49.6% win rate. Average team win diff is plus 0.4%. So this one doesn't necessarily move the needle a lot in terms of winning or losing games. As an 800 cost item, that makes sense, right? It's kind of low weight relative to some of the other items in the game. But with it already building into some good stuff with Swift Striker and Burst Fire, I do feel like this one could get nerfed just a little bit. But again, that's just my take. And it would be slight, 1 to 2% on the fire rate. And I think this item is in a really, really good spot. Honestly, this one is a little bit, I wouldn't say memey, but I don't know that this item is terrible right now. But for the cost, I do think it is pretty understandably not, it's an underbought item. I don't think this is a bad item necessarily, but I would like to see it nerfed, or buffed rather, purely because I think it's awesome. And that is Colossus. So for 6,400 credits, you get 600 bonus health, 15% weapon damage, and it's an active item where you gain bullet and spirit resist and slow the move and dash speed of enemies nearby. Your model size grows by 20%. You can see all the detailed stats there. Honestly, this item is so cool because of the model size increase that I just want it to have a use case. Now, I understand this one on a Stat Locker has only a 2% buy rate, 56.3% win rate, and actually helps your team 7.2% when you buy it. It's actually one of the highest in the games when bought, but it is extremely underbought. And I think it's a situational buy. It is situational because you need to be running a hero that benefits from all of these things. So you need a hero that benefits from stats, from weapon damage, and the one that is going to kind of be around enemies nearby, so you can get the kind of benefits of the active, right? Not that I want to see Colossus in every single game, and I always think this will be a somewhat situational item, but I just would like it to be a little bit stronger. When you compare it to some other 6,400 buys, it just doesn't really make sense. I feel like Juggernaut, understandably, is bought way more. Witchmail is getting to that point where it's bought way more. And obviously they have different use cases, right? But in terms of getting flat health, maybe this one could be like plus 750 health, and that would turn the percentage up a little bit more. Honestly, this one isn't going to get bought that much, and I've said that several times. I understand that. But would just like to see this maybe have a little bit more to it. Honestly, even if you just had Fortitude be able to build directly into this, instead of having it, to come from extra health only, could be a pathing, upgrade too. Having Fortitude go into Colossus would certainly help Fortitude to kind of get back to relevance after its nerf, and I think would make Colossus a lot more viable and a lot more bought. And who doesn't want 20% bigger, character models running around? I feel like I definitely do. So, would love to see a little Colossus buff in this next patch. In terms of nerfing Vitality items, I feel like Vitality items are in a weird place in that the 1600 category is just a gold mine. I feel like a lot of things in this bracket need some nerfing. I don't feel like you should be able to get this much value from a 1600 green item. I mean, this could apply to Battle Vest. Bullet Lifesteal is extremely highly bought, very popular. Debuff Reducer is extremely strong. Enchanter's Emblem is good. A lot of people buy Enduring Speed. Guardian Ward, maybe not so much, but Healbane, Healing Booster, Reactive Barrier a little bit less as well. Restorative Locket is probably an exception to this too. But Return Fire, Spirit Lifesteal, and Bow Shielding's also all really viable. I don't know that you can just have a uniform nerf against all the items in this category, but I do feel like maybe, with the exception of 3 items in this section, Restorative Locket, Reactive Barrier, and Guardian Ward, I think everything in this bracket is extremely commonly bought. This could just be like a trend in the game. Maybe players just don't want to go all in on green items because they want to deal more damage. That's totally understandable. But there's just so much value here right now that I honestly feel like it's just a good play a lot of the times if you're in the mid to late game and you have 1600 creds to go ahead and throw it towards one of these items. They're just so stat packed. They do so much for you. So there's a lot of items. I know this is not a specific item. I'm sorry for kind of breaking the format of the video here, but I think a lot of items in this category should be looked at for nerfs. In particular, Spirit and Weapon Shielding. We're in a weird cycle right now where it was like everyone was buying Battle Vest Enchanters, and they got slightly nerfed. The shieldings got a little bit buffed. I feel like there's maybe a little bit more corrective to do in that, just to give some more parity to the items in this section, and we'll be in a good spot. Now we're moving on to Spirit. Let's take a look at an item that I think desperately needs a buff, and I feel like it and its kind of counterpart both could use some help, and that is going to be Disarming Hex. I talked about Rusted Barrel in a previous video. It received some minor buffs in the last balance. I think the July 4th balance patch, it got some buffs. I thought maybe it would get bought a little bit more in the early game, and maybe Disarming Hex would become a little bit more viable. But man, at 3,200, this item feels really, really bad. I mean, it's so situational, and Stat Locker stats kind of back that up, right? It has a 0.5% buy rate, which is, I think, among the lowest in the game. Its win rate is the lowest win rate item at 38.2% win rate, with a average win differential of minus 11%. Those are huge numbers. Like I said, lowest win rate, among the lowest buy rates. It's fourth to the bottom, right? So I would really love to see something done to help this item out a little bit. I'll move myself over so we can see exactly what it does. Plus 100 bonus health, plus 1 meter per second sprint speed, disarms enemy target and reduces their bullet resist. Disarms obviously what it is, and a minus 13% bullet resist for 4 seconds, 23 meter cast range. This is a tough item. It's not that I'm not throwing my hands up and saying I don't know what to do with this item. It's not quite that, but it's always going to be a little bit situational because it's single target, right? When you have like a thing like Silence Wave that can just take out like a massive group of people, right? This one just feels so bad by comparison. Yeah, Silence Wave right here. This is way more popularly bought, and we're also in maybe a slightly more heavy spirit meta right now, which could make sense. But for disarming hex, it feels like some of these items that just have sprint speed as a stat just kind of get left behind. We talked about this with long range as well. It just doesn't feel like that really moves the needle. The 100 bonus health is fine, but it just doesn't feel like this really does what it should do. So maybe making the active a little bit less. If this went from 25 seconds to 20 seconds, maybe that's a really good change. But you also don't want to be disarming people just on cooldown, so that could get problematic pretty fast. I understand that, but at the end of the day, disarming hex is really bad in the game right now. No one buys it. I never see this in my games. And so as we get some balance updates coming soon, I would honestly really expect this would be at the top of my list, maybe number 1 on my list for items that need buffs in Deadlock. All right, and on the nerf end of items I think are a little bit overtuned in Spirit, I think there's one that to me it's tough because this item, understandably is very highly bought and can influence the game in a positive way. But I think the superior cooldown item in particular is just a little bit too strong. 4 out of combat regen is negligible, but the 25% cooldown on your abilities for 3200 just has always felt really, really strong. Its buy rate is 43.4%, which I think is the highest among items in Deadlock right now. Win rate's 51%, so your average win differential is 1.8% positive. I'm not sure exactly what you do to stop this. You have, obviously, the single imbue at 22%. This goes to 25% for all of your abilities. And it was recently nerfed, and I recognize that. I mean, it was the item cooldowns were taken away from this item. It is still bought at a really remarkable clip, and that's because it just does so much for you. I mean, getting cooldown on abilities helps every single hero in the game, every single game, pretty much. So I don't know what you do to this item, to be honest. I think it could use another nerf, though. I think Transcendent cooldown is in a good place. I think this actually makes a whole lot of sense. I think this is probably bought at a pretty sensible amount. I mean, this is a large financial investment for essentially just getting 5% more ability cooldown and the 30% item cooldown, obviously. I think this one's in a good spot. I think the single imbue is in a good spot. Maybe if you took away the 4 out of combat regen, just a slight tweak might be enough. This item just already does so much inherently. I just don't know that it needs a stat. I feel like most item, if not every item in the game, has a stat. I haven't actually checked. I'm pretty sure they all do. Maybe this is where you throw the 2 meter per second sprint speed. Something like that. Maybe you keep it at 22%, only you apply it to all items and kind of make it just a extended version of this item. I'm not exactly sure on this one, but it feels like it could use just a little bit more off the top. Honestly, because, again, it's the same thing I said earlier about, what was that item? Rapid rounds. If you're seeing an item every single game, it's not necessarily that the item's out of balance, and I recognize that, but it is usually a sign that something small could be done. And I think if it is, and if it's bought, instead of seeing it in what feels like 100% of your games, you see it in 80% of your games, 90% of your games, that starts to feel a whole lot better. I don't think this item is massively, massively out of tune by any means. I think the recent nerfs really hit it hard. I think just a little bit more, and this item will be perfect, and Spirit items should be in a really good place. All right, with items out of the way, let's take a look at heroes, and this time I want to give 2 heroes that I think need buffs, 2 heroes I think need nerfs. Let's start with what's already been confirmed, and that's our friend Shiv here is going to finally be getting a nerf. Yoshi confirmed this in the Discord, replying to a comment. He said it's a hero that starts with an S and ends with a V and has 4 letters in it. So Shiv will be getting a nerf. I think this is good. I think anyone who has played this game, this is where win rates can kind of fail you sometimes, because if you can pilot this hero, at least to a serviceable degree, you're going to be in a really good spot in your games almost every time. So I think this hero definitely needs a nerf. I think it's no question that it does. And this is one where it's really not based on stats. I have all the ranks pulled up on Stat Locker for hero win rates, and Shiv has a 48.9% win rate, even though he has a 69.5% pick rate. So he's getting picked a lot. People understand that he's good. He's just not getting piloted that well every game. Still deserving of a nerf, though, I think. He shouldn't... I don't personally think it's good for him to be able to chain his ultimate. I think maybe you could increase the percentage of it by a really small amount and then allow him one-time use, and then it just goes back on cooldown. I think one execute a fight is fine if it's well timed and well done. You know, I think that's totally balanceable, and I think a lot more reasonable for him. But his ult is just way too strong late game right now. It makes no sense. So I think Shiv definitely deserves a nerf. Next here on the chopping block is one that I will be sad to see a nerf come to, but I think it has to be 7. 7 has a 76.1% pick rate on Stat Locker, which is very high, and he has the highest win rate at 58.6%. This is also coming after a flat, I think it was, 10% nerf to his ultimate damage last patch. It doesn't matter. This hero is still way too good with spirit scaling being the way it is. So I think there's something that needs to be done. Honestly, I think that what is making him strong right now is Power Surge. The ultimate is very annoying and is an absolute late game devastator. I mean, it's just this unbelievable control you can have, right? But Power Surge is really what allows 7 to get to that point. So maybe if you make him a little bit less of just this crazy strong farming character, maybe he won't get to that point and be so devastating in the late game. It's hard to say exactly what to do with him, but at the end of the day, I think just some lesser scaling on these items overall will be good enough for 7 to be where he should be. This should always be, in my mind, a kind of glass cannon character that, in a pinch, can provide a really good ultimate for a team. But it shouldn't be an ultimate that just absolutely dominates every fight and makes it to where you can't play the game. So, again, these, with Shiv and 7, both of these heroes, I think, need nerfs because they, when they are doing what they do a lot of the times, make the game much less fun. And I know that's like a kind of a whiny answer, like, oh, it's no fun to play against Shiv. Like, it's not exactly that. It's just that their abilities are so shutdown heavy, and there's very, like, you either have to do very specific counterplay for, like, 7, like buying knockdown or something, or I don't know what you do for Shiv, to be honest. But when you're having to counterplay things that hard all the time with very high still win rate percentages from, you know, heroes like 7, 58.6%, it's just a red flag, and I think these two heroes deservingly need nerfs and will get nerfs in the next patch. But now let's turn the other direction. Let's talk about buffs. Let's talk about what heroes need help in this next update, this next balance update coming out, which I think, by the way, will be next week sometime. First off is Viscus. Now, I'm not just saying this because I'm an aspiring Viscus main. I'm trying to get there. I really am. But his pick rate is 28.3%, and his win rate is at the bottom at 45%. And I have felt this in my games. I don't play Viscus right now because he just feels so bad. And I don't exactly know what happened with Viscus. It's like kind of a mystery for me. You know, sometimes this is like, you know, 1 domino falling and it affects something 10 dominoes later. Maybe that's kind of where Viscus ended up here. He's just the 10th domino in the row, right? But the hitbox changes to Goo Ball and some other things along the way have really just made him very hard to play. I thought he would have performed a lot better in this patch. You know, I feel like if you have Pocket performing well, like some close range heroes performing a little bit better, sometimes Viscus can thrive in that environment. His cube is still really good. Like his kit is serviceable and honestly really strong. It just doesn't feel like he can do much right now in terms of his damage output. And so I think in particular, Splatter, if Splatter can be a little bit stronger, Puddle Punch feels really bad right now. And then maybe a little bit more damage on Goo Ball, like 110 damage there and the 80 damage there, I could see maybe getting scaled up a little bit. Outside of that, though, it just depends on what direction they want to take Viscus. You could give him some extra survivability, maybe make Cube a little bit better, some more health regen maybe, to make him a little bit more of that support-leaning, you know, vitality character, maybe. But at the end of the day, I think we should expect Viscus buffs coming. All right, and the next hero up is another one that, according to Stat Locker, is the very bottom when it comes to win rate. This is a 45.3% win rate character, so just above Viscus. 26.2 pick rate, so a little bit lower. And that is, where are you? It's Holiday. Now, Holiday, when you're watching pro games, you know, a lot of times a Holiday can make these sick plays, and then you are like, oh, this hero is really good. I remember watching Deadlock Fight Night and seeing some incredible Holiday play from like D-Mob and some others, right? But this hero just feels really hard to pilot for a lot of the player base, I think, myself included, you know, being around kind of the Emissary Archon rank. It feels hard to play Holiday, and when you run into a Holiday, it's either going to devastate you or you're going to probably be able to run right over it. So, you know, kind of anecdotal asides, you know, not being considered, I think Holiday could use some buffs. Again, this is another similar to Viscus. What direction do devs want to take this character? I think Holiday will always be a catch character catch character to a degree, like Paradox, like Bebop, because of the Spirit Lasso. I don't know if that's the way they want to build her, though. I would actually love a buff to Bounce Pad. I think Holiday is at her most unique and most fun when she's almost a little bit more like Lash than she is like Paradox. And I think Bounce Pad being strong would really be fun. Like, if you could have a build where you're bounce padding into fights and able to actually deal some pretty significant splash damage, that could be a ton of fun to play. Could be a nuisance, understandably. But I think Powder Keg has a lot of potential as an ability. I think Crack Shot's in an okay spot, and Spirit Lasso, even if you did nothing to it ever, will always be at least somewhat serviceable, because if you catch someone and you have someone else around, a lot of times you're going to net an elimination that way anyway. So all in all, though, I could see Holiday getting something slight here. This could also just be a hero that stays the same for a little bit, and item changes and some other heroes getting nerfed may just inherently buff Holiday. It's always hard to say with those kinds of things how that'll shake out, but in my mind, Holiday could use a little bit of a buff in the next patch. But that is going to do it for our kind of analysis of the balancing of the game right now. Balance in Deadlock is something that is always really fun to talk about for me because it's so complicated to understand. You know, it's that domino example I used a second ago where if you nerf one item, it could have a totally different, you know, strengthening impact on another item, and that could cause another set of dominoes to fall, and you can just end up in this rigmarole really fast of kind of balanced chain effects, right? This is where things like power creep come into play, all these kind of common balancing issues in games, right? All in all, though, I actually think Deadlock is in a really good balancing place right now. I know there have been some kind of community discussions about this, and I actually think the game is in a really playable state right now. The biggest issues are clearly, to me, Seven and Shiv. I think if those two heroes can get slight nerfs, and maybe some of these other tangential things we talked about can happen, I think the game's in a really, really good place. Now, of course, as soon as those two heroes get nerfed, there's going to be a hero that rises and takes their place as a, you know, high win rate, high pick rate hero. This is just always going to be the nature of this game to a degree. Again, what devs are always after is make the parity, instead of like this between heroes, make it a little bit more like this. That's all they can really do at the end of the day, because players, especially at the higher levels, Eternists, right, are going to find ways to exploit the best parts of the best heroes and use those things to win games. Kind of break the game. That's always what the role of the top level player is in a game like Deadlock, and it will always continue to happen. So, at the end of the day, I think the game's in a good spot. Expect a balance update next week. We did get some updates from Yoshi, you know, kind of following up from yesterday's video. That he confirmed Shiv is getting nerfed, and he also confirmed that new heroes are coming in the new patch. This was kind of a big deal that he just kind of threw on to the end of the conversation yesterday. So we do get absolute confirmation that new heroes are coming to the game. Now, as far as timeline goes, we still don't know on that, but we'll be sure to keep you all updated here at Dead Unlocked. In the meantime, let me know what other kind of content you all want to see. I've got some ideas for some fun stuff, but outside of keeping everyone up to date on the news, I always want to be doing, you know, fun, interesting things on the channel, so let me know if you guys have any ideas for that. Always open to community feedback. But that is going to do it today, so thank you all so much for tuning in. As always, from our house to yours, we'll see you guys next time here at Dead Unlocked.